everyone, and welcome to our third STEM Pathways conversation celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month with Dr. Minerva Cordero. Really excited to have you all on today, and you can find other STEM conversations on our YouTube channel on the STEM Conversations playlist. Next slide. So just to go ahead and introduce myself, my name is Amanda Acobez, and I am a program manager with NMSI. I serve schools in the southern part of the United States, mainly in Texas. I've also had schools in Florida, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So I joined NMSI back in 2018, and before that, I actually was a program manager for a nonprofit called Pencil, and I earned my bachelor's in theater, and I transitioned over to education, and it's been a wonderful ride since then. Next slide. So to talk a little bit about NMSI and who we are a national nonprofit organization focused on providing support, opportunity, and access to STEM education for all students. We work with local, state, and national partners to increase educational opportunities and empower better outcomes for all students. Now, research has shown that STEM skills and knowledge increase job opportunities, earning potential, and technology literacy. Next slide. And in order to achieve that, we have our solution model. So we have developed a holistic pre-K to 12 plus model of services that empowers success and for all participants, especially military connected students and students furthest from opportunity. So here you will see that we have teacher trainings, student supports, administrative supports, program management, a whole suite of services and programs. Now, without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Dr. Minerva Cordero. She is the Senior Associate Dean of Science, a mathematics professor, and Distinguished University Teaching Professor at the University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Cordero earned a doctorate of philosophy in mathematics from the University of Iowa, a Master of Arts in mathematics from the University of California, Berkeley, and a Bachelor of Science in mathematics from the University of Puerto Rico. Dr. Cordero's work has earned her recognition as a Ford Legendary Woman and a HENAC Education Award from the Great Minds in STEM. She most recently was named an If-Then Ambassador for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. A life-size 3D model of Dr. Cordero is part of the If-Then exhibit in Dallas, serving to inspire more women to pursue careers in STEM. So let's go ahead and give a round of applause to Dr. Minerva Cordero. Excited to meet with you today. How are you?
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you for asking, and so excited to engage in conversation with you today. So, I don't want to scare anyone watching today, but your research is in non-associative algebra and geometry. Please explain what that is and how does it impact our understanding and appreciation of mathematics?
Excellent question, Amanda. Well, my research is very exciting because it is at the intersection of two fundamental subjects, algebra and geometry. But I look at algebras and geometries that are very different than the ones that we typically study in high school. And the crucial difference is that these geometries have only a finite number of points and lines. This makes then this area part of what we call discrete mathematics. And this area has a lot of applications to many, many disciplines. For example, in encoding and decoding information, like in a cell phone, when you are sending a message to someone, the information, what you type is encrypted, and then it gets received by the right person, and then that person is able to see exactly the message that you sent. There's a lot of mathematics that go behind that process. Also, machines that are used, equipment that is used in medical studies, for example, MRI machines, understanding the messages that comes from these machines. uses this type of mathematics. And in general, mathematics has so many applications to real life situations, and people that study mathematics can have jobs in so many different industries, even in Hollywood. Making the animated movies takes a lot of work, and many of the people that work in those actually have degrees in mathematics.
Wow, that's really awesome. Mathematics is so intertwined into so many industries, even beyond computer science. So thank you for that. Your early education was in Puerto Rico. I'm a Boricua myself. And you've described the community as economically poor. How did that impact your post secondary and professional careers coming from that background?
Amanda, you're another Boricua. You just made my day. This is so exciting. Yes, and for me, growing up in such a homogeneous community where we were all Hispanics, we were all from low socioeconomic backgrounds, it was actually quite advantageous for me.
Hmm.
We were all the same in so many regards, and what distinguished us was actually our ability to do well in school. My parents didn't go to college. You see, my father only completed a second grade, my mother only a fifth grade. However, they told us that education is the key to a brighter and a better future. So they instilled in me and in my five siblings our desire to learn and go to college. So, actually having coming from this humble background was really the inspiration to continue going to college, to continue developing myself, because I knew that in order for things to get better, we had to get an education.
Yeah. Your story is a prime example of the saying, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. You're, of course, not finished, but how do you help students recognize their potential regardless of where they started?
That's a great question. You see, and I see education is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you come from a wealthy background, if you come from a humble background, education is good for everyone. Anyone can get into education, get an advanced degree, and improve their lives and the lives of those around them. For example, after I finished my bachelor's degree at the University of Puerto Rico, one of my professors recommended that I continue my studies and get a doctorate, a PhD in mathematics. The problem was at that time there was no such degree in Puerto Rico. And that meant I have to leave Puerto Rico and come to the United States or to another country to do that. But I knew that because of my socioeconomic background, I was not able to afford that. But one of my professors said, well, there are lots of scholarships that you can apply for, and it will pay for everything for you to go to college. And actually, that's what happened. I applied to the National Science Foundation and I received a scholarship, and I was able to continue my education. So it doesn't matter where you start. It's certainly true that it matters where you end. And the way to go from having the life that you have to having um, a more satisfactory life for you, your family, those that you love and care about, is to get an education, is to go to college, is to get a degree. And especially degrees in STEM are the ones that is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Those are the jobs that are growing at the fastest rate. And those are the jobs where you have the greatest potential to influence what happens in society.
Thank you for that. And that is why it's so important to continue to expand access and opportunity to students, especially those furthest from opportunity. Um,
Absolutely.
yes. I read that two stern teachers in elementary and middle school inspired your love for math. Please do tell. How do you think about that today? And does it inform your teaching?
Mathematics is a very logical subject. And the most important thing is to learn it well from the beginning. Yes, so my teachers emphasize the value of accuracy and paying attention to detail. So in my work with my students, I show them how logical mathematics is and how important it is to be precise and to be accurate. You see, most of the time when I encounter someone and I tell them that I'm a mathematician and that I teach mathematics, the most common comments that I get is like, I'm not good at math. I could never learn math. Math is like a foreign language. And that kind of really saddens me because mathematics is a very logical subject. And what attracted me to it was the fact that I didn't have to memorize anything. You see a math problem, you have to solve that problem. And to me, the problem is telling you what you have to do. So understanding what's behind it, that's the key to being able to solve that problem. And that's what I find so fascinating about math. And that's something that I definitely try to instill in my students. And one way I do that is also showing them the connections of the mathematics we're learning to different applications that it has later on in their jobs. And in so many endeavors, mathematics just touches, like you said at the beginning, Amanda, it just touches every area of our lives.
Yeah. Now, both of both of those women, and most, if not all, the people you grew up around were Latinos. You mentioned that before, and Latinas. How did that upbringing shape your experiences when you went ahead and moved over to California and then eventually Iowa?
Um, I would tell you the truth. When I came to the United States, it was the first time that I realized that people could make assumptions about my abilities based on my gender or my race. So the fact that I was a Hispanic woman was considered like almost a handicap when thinking about pursuing a career in science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. So it was really a big shock for me that people will be making conclusions about my ability simply based on the fact that I was a Latina woman. And so I had to overcome that. And then I soon started realizing, wow, we don't really have, there are not really very many people that look like me in these classrooms. There were very few Latinos. And as you know, Amanda, when you look at the workforce in science and engineering, only about 7% are Latinos. However, the population in the United States is 18% Latinos. So we're definitely underrepresented in the STEM workforce, in science and engineering jobs. And Latina women is about 2 to 3%. So the good thing is we're seeing more Latino students enrolling in college, both at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level. And we have also more students enrolling in science degrees, not necessarily in engineering or mathematics, but in some of the other sciences. And so it's really important that we realize that the fact that someone might think that we're not capable of doing something is totally a cultural thing. We are as capable as anybody to have a career in a science or engineering and be as successful as anybody else.
Thank you for that. I also read that your siblings moved away for their education. How did that affect your family and community relationships? And how do you coach young Latinos and Latinas who might be struggling with the challenges that can come with leaving close knit homes?
Yes, Amanda, leaving my family actually was one of the most challenging things that I have ever done, but it's one that I knew I had to do. You see, I have three sisters and two brothers. And actually, one of my sisters also came to the United States to get a PhD in mathematics. The other two sisters went to the University of Puerto Rico, and one of my brothers went to a private university, and the other one went to vocational school. Even our undergraduate degree, which was at the University of Puerto Rico, the University of Puerto Rico was quite far from home. You see, I grew up and I lived in the countryside, and the commute back and forth to the university was about 2 hours each way. So many a times we would find a place, a room to rent during the week so that we could go to classes and be on time on our classes and then go back homes in the weekend. And it was a difficult situation, but again, my parents really, especially my mother, she really understood the value of education. Unfortunately, my father passed away when I was starting college, and so it was my mother who really carried the load. But that emphasis that education is the key to a better future was so ingrained in us that we all understood we have to make this sacrifice if we want to have a better life later on. So while it was challenging, we understood this is the way to do it. And needless to say, we remained very, very close, even with my family in Puerto Rico, with my sisters. We talked all the time. We're very, very close. So having that physical distance that happened for a few years is not going to impact your relationship with your family. Actually, sometimes it gets even stronger because they realize and they appreciate the sacrifices that you're making, right? Being away from home so that you can get that level of education that you need to have a better and a brighter future.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know that that is definitely something cultural from our backgrounds that can at times be an obstacle to overcome, especially when you're going away to college or trying to figure out what your next step is going to be. I know when I was a college recruiter, that was also a challenge when speaking to some of my students of color in particular, and just having those conversations with their families about potentially having to move away for education or internship opportunities, so on and so forth. So not being afraid to cross that bridge. So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely. And understanding also that it is temporary, right? This is not going to be a forever. You're going to be away while you're in college. And then once you have that degree in hand, you can make choices about where you get your job,
Yep.
right? So have the courage, do it because it doesn't mean forever you're going to be away from them.
Yes. Thank you. Now, we all know it's still common for women and people of color to be the only woman or person of color in a class or professional situation. And you actually spoke a little bit about this in one of your previous answers. But are there experiences like that that stand out for you? When, coming up as a mathematician, was there any particular time where you felt particularly isolated or empowered due to your background?
Yes, actually, being a woman in mathematics means that I will be a minority in any room, right, with other mathematicians. If we are at a meeting with mathematicians, there's going to be very few women. Being a Hispanic woman in mathematics is almost guaranteed that I will be the only one in the room. I have learned to navigate the situation and actually try to do my best in whatever situation I find myself. And that way I know that my words cannot be ignored. So if I am at a research conference where we're talking about the research, I make sure that I'm very prepared to present my results, that I do all of the background preparation that I need. So when I am there, I am as knowledgeable as they are. So you kind of have to develop that confidence and have this thought that if someone else can do this work, I can do it too. It takes a while to develop that sense of confidence that I can do this. I can do what any of you can do, right? I just have to make sure that I'm spending the time, the dedication to do it. And really, Amanda, the difference between those that are able to, let's say, graduate with the college degree, let's say in mathematics, the only difference is those that really put the time and the effort versus those who don't. And this is one thing that I tell my students in class. Everyone in here is capable of passing my class. I have no doubts that you all can pass the class. Now, every year someone is not going to. And why is that? Because they're not putting the time. They're not really giving it what it takes to be successful. But it's really a matter of time and dedication. It has nothing to do with your ability to do it. It has to do with the time and the dedication that you give to that particular task.
Thank you. You are an if then ambassador for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Tell us about that work and how it's informed your work with students.
Wonderful. That's a great question. So in 2019, there was a call for nominations of women in science and engineering and in medicine who could serve as role models for young women, young girls to see women. And the idea was if she can see it, then she can be it. And so that's why the name of this program is the if then. If you can see it, then you can be it. And so they selected 100 women. Actually, they ended up selecting 125 women from all over the country who would serve as role models for young girls, in particular middle school students, for them to see that these women have accomplished so much. Another statistic I'm going to share with you is that when you look at the workforce, the people working in science and engineering, about 27% are women. Only 27%. When you look at the population of the United States, last number I looked at in 2019, 51% were women. So in this country, there are more women than men, 51%. Yet when you look at who is working in science and engineering, it's less than 30%, less than 1/3 of the people working in those fields. So why is that? Is it because we don't have role models? Is it because they don't see themselves doing those jobs? And so that's why they created this group of women to show young ladies, no, look, you can be a doctor, you can be an astronaut, you can be an engineer, you can be a mathematician, right? Someone else, another woman already did this, and you can do it. So part of this program, there is a digital library, the largest digital library that actually is free access. Anyone that goes into if then exhibit will be able to access information about each of these women and what they do and why they were selected for this honor. Also in Dallas, there is right now an exhibit of 125 statues of these women, and this is life-size statues of each of these ambassadors, and the story and why they are there, why they were selected, what they're doing to change the world, what they're doing to make it better for all of us is there at the exhibit. It's it sort of has been the culmination, kind of the cherry on top of the ice cream. I've had a wonderful career. I love what I do. I love interacting with young people. I love helping people see that they can do math. So many people have so much fear of math. And the greatest joy for me is when I can actually change that, when someone can say, oh, that was good. And actually my favorite comment from my student evaluation is she makes math fun. I mean, when someone says that, you have made it. And so having now been recognized with this honor of being called an ambassador and having a statue of myself has been so meaningful. And the first time when I saw it, I just thought back to how much I have done and what brought me to this position where I can go there now and see a statue of myself representing all of that effort, all of that work. Of course, I thought of my mother, who I wish she could see it, but unfortunately, she passed away. But I think of also all the people, all the women and teachers that motivated me to pursue my studies, to pursue my career, all the people that believed in me from the very early age that I could do this. So it has been a fantastic experience, and something that, like I said, is just like the best part for my career. And like you said, it's not over yet, but has been a great to sort of summarizes what I've been doing. And what is interesting about this collection, these women, not only they have done amazing work, scientific, engineering, all kinds of important discoveries, they've also devoted their time to bring more women into the disciplines. And that's something that we all need to do if we want those statistics to change.
Yes, and thank you for all of that. And the other key there too is also bringing kids in earlier. So definitely exposing young girls in middle school, even elementary, to the sciences and STEM and everything that's out there. It must be so surreal having a statue of yourself. That is such an honor and really cool fact to share at a party. But
Yeah.
um,
Although I tell you, when I say people like don't believe me totally, it's like really there's this statue of you. But you touch on something really important, Amanda. And the younger that we can attract the people to the disciplines, the more important it is. Um, Fifth and sixth grade, those are such critical years for young girls to say, yes, this is something that I want to do, because already by the time they get to high school, they have decided whether they're going to do science or not. So that's why you're right. Starting in elementary school, already fourth, fifth grade, all the way to seventh, eighth grade. Those are key years for people, for young ladies, and young Latinos also, to realize, hey, this is something I want to do. There's great opportunities in these
mhm,
disciplines, and I want to do that. For example, at my school, we have a camp that is only for girls in engineering that is called Girl Engineering. This is for fifth and sixth grade girls, where it's only girls doing engineering. And the value of that, again, they are not there in competition with the boys, who traditionally are the ones that are more excited about these things. This is about the young ladies, to get excited about doing those things. So if we can really get them at this stage and get them excited, then we've already accomplished a great deal. Because, as I said, when it comes to starting college, the number of women and Latinos that say, I'm going to major in science or in one of the sciences or in engineering, is way too small compared
mhm,
to the population that we have.
mhm. And you mentioned this earlier. Connecting the dots for students is critical. So, as a math teacher, not only teaching the different, areas of math to a student, but saying, hey, you can use this concept and this is how it maps up to your future. You know, this maps up to engineering, this maps up to animation. And connecting those dots for students are so crucial. I remember sitting in, a classroom as a student back in high school and elementary school, and half the time thinking, like, when am I going to use this? And I feel like had I had that guidance earlier on, maybe I would have studied STEM. And I think, to your point, getting students exposed to that early on, especially young girls in fourth, fifth grade. I have an 8-year-old. She's already interested in STEM, and I'm hoping to keep up that momentum with her. And watching series like this where they get to see actual mathematicians that look like them, is exposure enough. So thank you for.
Yes, and there's a program that you can watch with your daughter that is called Mission Unstoppable. And
Ooh.
Mission Unstoppable is sponsored by the If Then Foundation. Is in regular television CBS series called Mission Unstoppable, and it's showing women scientists, engineers doing their job, and it's fascinating. It's geared towards young girls. Is The host is Miranda Cosgrove from iCarly. So she's the one that does the program, and it's a great program for girls to see. Wow, look at all these women doing all these things. So that's definitely one of those things that you definitely need to watch with them. Yes, and about connecting the dot, that is so important. Even the other day, I met with a group of women, and I was just they asked me about my research, and so I'm explaining to them my research and the connections, and they go like, why no one talks about the connections of all this math with what you do? I had a program in here funded by the National Science Foundation, where we had math graduate students, PhD students, go into the classrooms, and this was middle school and high school, and then the superintendent said, "Can we bring in some sixth graders and fifth graders too?" And what the students were doing, going there and telling, "Look, the research I do in math, this is how it relates to what you're learning now." And I so clearly remember one of our students was doing research in computational mathematics in the area of neuroscience. So he was talking about how you determine using different equipment where there might be a blood clot in the brain. Well, he tied this to the coordinate system. You know, when you are in basic grade in algebra, they start teaching you how to put points in the coordinate system. Well, he said this is how we're going to find that clot, by putting points in a coordinate system. So
Wow.
see how important it is to know exactly where does this point lie,
Yeah.
right? It's just amazing. So really every concept, everything that you learn has some connections to some real life problems, something it helps solve some problems. And unfortunately, I do not know why this is not being taught and included in the regular curriculum.
Yes. And I was actually sitting in a conference the other day, actually a workshop for high school counselors. And the biggest takeaway I took from that was not asking a student, what do you want to be when you grow up, but what problems do you want to solve? So this whole example that you were talking about with the coordinates and mapping the parts of the
Yes.
brain, and
Yes.
like that's incredible. So and that doesn't box a kid in, you know, because it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, I want to be this. And then you think, okay, I have to go to school to just do this. But there's so many other opportunities out there. So really interesting stuff. Thank you.
I love that. So from now on, I'm not going to ask, what do you want to study? I'm going to ask, what problems do you want to solve? You know, and many a time students say, oh, you know, why we have to take so much math? Math is useless. And I say, let me tell you something. What we do in math, we solve problems. What is it that you do in any job? You have to solve problems. What do you do every day? You're faced with a situation and you have to solve it. And when you're trained in mathematics, you learn how to draw the right conclusions, right? You have some facts and you're going to draw conclusions. Here's a short story. Once I had a student, very, very bright student, math, a math major, and he was graduating. And I said, so what are you doing? Graduate school? What are you going to do? And he said, no, I'm going to law school. And I said, weren't you a math major? He said, yes. And I received an advice from my uncle. He said, the best major to help you think how to solve problems is mathematics. And as a lawyer, right, you have facts in front of you and you have to get to conclusions. Well, you have to train your mind to be able to do that. And so he did, and he's now a very successful attorney here in Dallas. And it's like, wow. So even math, he was not getting a job into math, but he used math as a tool to prepare him for law school. Isn't that amazing?
I know. That is amazing. All right, switching gears a little bit. When people see events like this or come across your work, what are the biggest things you want them to experience or take away?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Something that I said at the beginning, mathematics, science, engineering is for everyone. It doesn't matter
Say it
what your
again.
background is.
It is for everyone.
I know we have to say it is. It is for everyone. You don't have to come from a particular background. You don't have to be a particular gender. You don't have to have even particular grades. Science, technology, engineering, math is not just for the all A student, it's for everyone. Anyone can learn these subjects, anyone can get a degree in these subjects and have very successful and productive careers that are going to be meaningful for them and that is going to make an impact in society. You know, still the stereotype of the scientist who is crazy, who looks like Einstein, or the engineer who is this man with this hat doing these things. We need to kind of get rid of those stereotypes because it's really for anyone. Anyone can be successful. I cannot see anyone who came from a more humble background than I did. And I was able to come to the United States, get a PhD, be a professor at the university. I have traveled pretty much all over the world to talk about my research, to talk about best ways to teach science, best ways to attract students into mathematics, right? So the fact that I was born into a humble family, the fact that my parents didn't go to college, none of that stopped me from getting where I'm getting. And that's what I really want young people to see, that you can do it just like anyone else. You can definitely do it. Don't put barriers in front of you. And remember, this is something I tell my students in my class, just because last year you were not successful in your math class or in your biology, that doesn't mean that this year you cannot be good, and that moving forward you cannot be the best, right? There is this theory of the 10,000 hours, whatever. If you spend time with something, you're going to become good at it. So I don't care if last year when you did algebra 1 or algebra you got a C or you got a D. This year when you're doing geometry, you can get an A and you can be the best one in your class, because all it takes is putting that time. It's putting that effort into doing the right thing. And it's so totally worth it. Once you graduate with your college degree, then you're going to enjoy the rest of your life to have a good job that brings you satisfaction and that you know you're making a difference in the life of others.
Yes, so many inspirational takeaways there. Um, what haven't we talked about that you think young people need to hear?
Um, there is a quote, I don't know, maybe it's from the Bible, that said there's a time for everything. And there is a time to have fun, and there's a time for playing, and there's a time for being serious, and for taking your studies seriously, and for taking your career seriously, and for thinking, right? I might be 13 years old now, 15, I could 17, but there's going to come the time when you're going to be an adult, and when you're going to have to be responsible for yourself and for your family if you choose to have one. And so it's very important that when you make decisions today about where your time is going to go, that you think about, well, in 4 years, how is this going to be impacting my life?
Mm.
Again, I'm not saying we cannot have fun. I love having fun, playing, doing everything, but there's a time for everything. And when we make decisions, we have to think, this is not just for today, this is for my future. And we can all do it. Like I said, we can all get there. And I love when I see students that are starting college when it's their first year, and I meet them and I talk to them and I said, so this is your first step. You already made it in here. Let's make sure that the decisions you make each and every day are going to lead to you graduating from here in a timely manner and getting the job that you want, right? Because it's so worth then the rest of your life. There you are enjoying uh, the fruits of the hard work that you're going to be putting right now. So it's definitely worth it. Put in the time when you are in school, when you are in college, and then you're going to be able to really enjoy having a good, successful, and satisfying life.
Sound advice. And it truly takes a village. Are there any other shameless plugs? I know you're If Then ambassador. I know you spoke about the amazing statues of all the women. Any hashtags you want to share before we go ahead and
Yeah,
wrap
I know.
up?
I just want everyone to look at If Then, the exhibit, to get inspired, to get motivated. And then also, especially now, in the times of COVID, COVID has affected all of our lives in so many ways. There have been so many things that we could not do in the last year and a half because of COVID. But that shouldn't be the reason why I don't move forward. That shouldn't be the reason why I think that tomorrow is not going to be a better day, that tomorrow things will not change. So we need to remember that COVID is here. There's a lot of science, a lot of research behind this, why this happened, and how to take care of the situation. But don't be discouraged by this. This is a very short time when you look at the history, right? And this happened this year, just like now we talk about the pandemic of the 1918. Now we have the pandemic here of 2019. The time it would pass, but this shouldn't be something that we can say, oh, because of COVID now I cannot do this. Because of COVID, I wasted a year, I lost a year in school, because we can make up that time and we can move forward and keep going with the plans that we made before this pandemic came to us, Or because of this pandemic, now you may say, hey, I want to do that kind of research. I want to be the one finding new vaccines, finding new medicine, finding new treatment for these different diseases that could come up just like that out of the blue and impact so much of our lives. So I hope that we will use this time to actually do reflection and feel more motivated to do things that are going to be meaningful and impactful in our lives.
Thank you so much, Dr. Minerva Cordero. I hope you had as good as a time as I did. I loved learning about your journey in STEM and just all the inspirational takeaways that you blessed us with here today. Just a reminder to you folks out there, this is the third of our STEM Pathways conversation celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. You can find today's conversation and previous conversations on our YouTube channel. Just search for NMSI, that's NMSI, and it will be under the STEM Conversations playlist. Next slide. And to just close out, if you have any questions or want to get connected with NMSI, we'd be honored to connect with you directly. My information is up on here. And Juan Elizondo, our VP of External Affairs, his email address is on here as well. Thank you so much for engaging with us today, and stay safe.
Bye.